Hey everyone, welcome to Unit 5, our last unit of the course, and so congratulations if you made it this far. It's almost over, and in this unit here you can see we've got 3 chapters as usual, chapters 12, 13, and 14. Let's just say a little bit about each one of these chapters here. Chapter 12, as you can see here, is all about groups, and one of the first things you're going to learn about groups is what actually counts as a real group and what isn't a group. That's actually a bit trickier than you might think there. And part of what you're going to explore in this chapter are different sorts of group dynamics, particularly around decisions that people make. So decision making there, and you may have heard that old expression, are two heads better than one? Well, you're going to learn all about that in this chapter here, and some other sorts of decision making dynamics there as well. And also you're going to learn about the psychology of mobs, because a mob is certainly a group, and you may have heard about how the mob took on a mind of its own. Well, there's certain psychological and behavioral principles that seem to go along with being part of this mob with a mind of its own. Some real particular things that emerge, and we've got, of course, all of our fancy special labels for those sorts of processes, but you'll learn about that, and it's really fascinating stuff there, I think you'll find, particularly this phenomenon called de-individuation. Okay, and you'll learn all about what that is as we work our way through this chapter there. And there's also some pretty cool stuff I've assigned there for you about the influence of power. You may have heard about the old adage that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, because that's absolutely true, and no pun intended there, but I've assigned all that for your homework there. And that's very fascinating stuff there too, and it's especially timely in light of the Me Too movement that you all have heard about there, I'm sure. So there's some real proof to back up all the complaints that people have had over all these decades about this just totally inappropriate behavior, to put it mildly, that we see sometimes when one person has power over someone who doesn't have that same degree of power, and it's pretty intriguing stuff. Now the next chapter here is about a troubling issue, and that's aggression. And one of the first things you're going to learn about with aggression is that not all aggression is the same. There's different types of aggression that human beings perform, and also, as we've seen many other times in the course regarding other topics that our chapters showcase, we're going to especially see in this chapter here, when it comes to aggression, how the power of the situation plays a role in aggression. There's actually a number of particular situational factors that seem to fuel the likelihood of aggression occurring, you're going to see. And I'm sure some of you have learned about those or heard about those before, but we're going to do the drill down in the chapter and really examine those. And there's also the role of construal. Remember, construal is that second major theme of our course, and certainly how you construe things sometimes when it comes to aggression will make or break aggression happening or not. And we're also going to examine in this chapter too how we might try to reduce or come to terms with the aggression that we have. So negotiations, these fascinating things in the criminal justice system called restorative justice programs. So there's some real practical things here, and it is definitely hard to try to reduce aggression and to make amends for those things, but it's possible. And with a lot of hard work and effort and dedication on the efforts of both parties involved, the aggressor and the victim, if you will. But we can work things out sometimes, and it's certainly good to know that there are some possible solutions there. Now, in the last chapter here, it's all about altruism, which simply said is all about helping behavior, more or less. And as you're going to learn that there are different reasons that we help people. Sometimes it's all about, and I'm being informal here, but there's names for all this you're going to see in the lecture and the textbook there. Sometimes we help because it's all about what's in it for ourselves, what's in it for me, basically. But sometimes we help because we're interested in what's in it for the other person. The person in distress, the person that needs some help there. And it turns out, too, that there are certainly situational factors that play a role in whether or not we will help or not, and construal factors too, again, those two major themes. But we are going to examine both sides of the helping coin here in this chapter, what seems to play a role in why we help others that need it, and what seems to play a role, unfortunately, in why we don't deliver help when it's needed, sometimes terribly. So we're going to review a real famous lightning rod example of that happened right back the year I was born there in 1964. And so now you know how old I am, okay? So it's good stuff there. And there's also a closing section there on cooperation, because that's part of helping too. And it's not very extensive, but it's some pretty fascinating stuff there too. And I hope you enjoy that. So that's all the material we're going to cover in this chapter. And by the way, you'll do all the usual things, your homework, your quizzes, your inquisitive assignments there, and you'll take your final exam. And by the way, your final exam is just over this last unit of material. It's not comprehensive. It's not cumulative. Because I'm such a nice guy, I spare you all that. It's just over these last 3 chapters. And when you're done with that exam, you're done with the course. Okay? All right, so good luck on your material there, and take care.